गोवर्धन की जय,
जय
वृंदावन धाम की जय,
जय
नवद्वीप मायापुर धाम की जय,
जय
गंगा माई की जय,
जय
यमुना माई की जय,
जय
तुलसी देवी की जय,
जय
भक्ति देवी की जय,
जय
श्रमवेता भक्तवृंद की जय,
जय
गौर प्रेम आनंदे.
हरि हरि
हरि हरि बोल.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
हरे
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glory to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Hari Hari Bol.
हरि हरि
Hare Hare.
Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Shami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Namo
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om
Om
Namo
Namo
Bhagavate
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo
Bhagavate
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
We're reading, discussing, studying Sri Caitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, Chapter 17, the Lord's pastimes in his youth, and this is text 198.
ম্লেচ্ছ কহে হিন্দুরে আমি করি পরিহাস কেহ কেহ কৃষ্ণদাস কেহ রামদাস
The meat eater replied, sometimes I joke with the Hindus. Some of them are called Krishna Das and some are called Ramdas.
কেহ হরিদাস সদা বলে হরি হরি জানি কারো ঘরে ধন করিবেক চুরি
Some of them are called Haridas. They always chant Hari Hari, and thus I thought they would steal the riches from someone's house. Purport. Another meaning of Hari Hari is I am stealing, I am stealing. So just to give the context, this is Chand Kazi, Habib Rahmana. He's explaining to Lord Chaitanya his experience after being threatened by Lord Nrsingadev, and he says that his orderlies they are they're the meat eaters here. They're coming and explaining what's going on after he gave the order to stop the Sankirtan or the chanting of the holy names. Okay.
সেই হইতে জিহ্বা মোর বলে হরি হরি ইচ্ছা নাহি তবু বলে কি উপায় করি
Since that time, my tongue also always vibrates the sound Hari Hari. I have no desire to say it, but still, my tongue says it. I don't know what to do. Purport. Sometimes demoniac non-believers, not understanding the potency of the holy name, make fun of the Vaishnavas when the Vaishnavas chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This joking is also beneficial for such persons. Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 2nd chapter, verse 14, indicates that the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, even in joking, in the course of ordinary discussion, in indicating something extraneous or in negligence is called namabhas, which is chanting that is almost on the transcendental stage. This namabhas stage is better than namaparad. Namabhas awakens the supreme remembrance of Lord Vishnu. When one remembers Lord Vishnu, he becomes free from material enjoyment. Thus, he gradually comes forward toward the transcendental service of the Lord and becomes eligible to chant the holy name of the Lord in the transcendental position. Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Nama Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Jena Bhutale Shayam Rupakada Vaikam Dadati Shapandantika Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Before speaking, I'd like to ask the blessings and permission of all the devotees, but particularly those who are senior by age and or by advancement in Krishna consciousness. Thank you, Hare Krishna. So we find here that the orderlies, servants of Chandkazi, are reporting that they're chanting Hari Hari because they've heard the chanting of Hari Hari from the Hindus and they're joking about it. So the Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that even that joking by chanting the names of God in a joking manner still has benefit. Quite often when people would publish articles about the Hare Krishna movement in newspapers, and sometimes they were favorable, sometimes they were non-favorable. But even those that were not favorable, they had to say Hare Krishna many times, and Srila Prabhupada would comment, "Oh, this is beneficial for the person writing it and those who read it as well, because that's chanting for this mentioned here, Namabhas. There are 10 offenses in chanting the holy names that make progress difficult, and some of them are to blaspheme devotees who've dedicated their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord, to consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the names of Lord Vishnu, to disobey the orders of the spiritual master. Also, there's an offense to chant trying to relieve oneself of sinful activities or to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting, or to consider the chanting of the holy names to be some kind of auspicious ritualistic activity. But Srila Prabhupada mentions here that this chanting done by the orderlies here is namabhas, means they're not doing it for any material gain or to relieve themselves of sinful reaction, anything like that. So therefore, it's not offensive chanting, so they're getting more benefit. It's very interesting. And Prabhupada quotes that Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th canto, 2nd chapter, verse 14. Can we go to that verse? It's a very interesting verse. 6th canto, 2nd chapter, verse 14.
I could have gone the other way, but 6 and 2.1.
6:2:14, yeah. There we go. One who chants the holy name of the Lord is immediately freed from the reactions of limited sins, even if he chants indirectly to indicate something else, jokingly. Oh, here it also says, for musical entertainment, or even neglectfully. This is accepted by all the learned scholars of the scriptures. So we sang the prayer by Bhaktivinoda Thakur glorifying the holy name. So this is being reinforced here. It's like, he says, it's like the sun, and the sun can purify even the urinal by its rays and not become affected. So the holy name is compared to the sun in the sky, because it has the same effect on the dirty hearts of us and so many people, even the orderlies here of Chandkazi, who are making fun. So we can go back to that verse. Questions, comments, additions? Okay. Next text.
আর ম্লেচ্ছ কহে, শুনো, আমি তো এই মতে, হিন্দুকে পরিহাস কইনু সেদিন হইতে, জিহ্বা কৃষ্ণ নাম করে, না মানে বর্জন, না জানি কি মন্ত্রৌষধি জানে হিন্দুগণ।
Another meat eater said, "Sir, please hear me. Since the day I joked with some Hindus in this way, my tongue chants the Hare Krishna hymn and cannot give it up. I do not know what mystic hymns and herbal potions these Hindus know." So another point here is we see that this is a meat eater. So how is it that the meat eater is getting some attachment here for the holy name? Usually we say that, to get the real benefit, you have to follow 4 regulative principles, one of which is to avoid meat, fish, or eggs. And apparently at least at the time the meat eater heard the holy name and began chanting it, he was not situated in that practice. So this is a important point, that first we recommend people to chant, and then the regulations will follow. All the other regulations, rules and regulations of Krishna consciousness are meant for and serve the idea of remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, the source of everything and the center of our meditation. So with that as the aim, all the other rules and regulations will follow. Important point. Text 203.
এত শুনি তা সভারে ঘরে পাঠাইল, হেন কালে পাষণ্ডী হিন্দু 5-7 আইল।
After hearing all this, I sent all the mlechas back to their homes. 5 or 7 non-believing Hindus then approached me. Purport. The word Pashandi refers to non-believers engaged in fruitive activities and to idolatrous worshippers of many demigods. Pashandis do not believe in one God, the Supreme Personality, Lord Vishnu. They think that all the demigods have the same potency as he. The definition of Pashandi is given in the Tantra Shastra. Yastu Narayanam Devam Brahma Daivatai Samat Vainaiva Viksheta Sapashandi Bhaved Dhruvam. A Pashandi is one who considers the great demigods such as Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sometimes it's said equal to or independent, but equal to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan. Hari Bhakti Vilas 1.117. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is Asamordva. In other words, no one can be equal to or greater than him. But Pashandis do not believe this. They worship any kind of demigod. thinking it all right to accept whomever they please as the Supreme Lord. The Pashandis were against the Hare Krishna movement of Lord Chaitanya, Lord Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and now we see practically that they also do not like the humble attempts to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world. On the contrary, these Pashandis say that we are spoiling the Hindu religion because people all over the world are accepting Lord Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead, according to the version of Bhagavad Gita as it is. The Pashandis condemn this movement, and sometimes they accuse Vaishnavas from foreign countries of not being bona fide. Even so-called Vaishnavas, pseudo-followers of the Vaishnav cult, do not agree with our activities in making Vaishnavas in Western countries. Such Pashandis existed even during the time of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and they continue to exist. Despite all the activities of these Pashandis, however, the prediction of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will triumph. Pritivite ache jata nagaradi gram, sarvatra prachar hoibe mor naam. In every town and village, the chanting of my name will be heard. No one can check the spread of the Krishna consciousness movement, because upon this movement is the benediction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Well, this is a very interesting purport describing the definition of a Pashandi. Pashandi, Srila Prabhupada notes that Lord Krishna is, the word is Ashamordva. You saw that word, Ashamordva? That means that Asama means equal to, and Urdhva means above. Ashamordva. Sama Urdhva. There it is. A means not, and Shama means equal to, and Urdhva means above. So that's a name for Lord Krishna. But the non-believers are described here as Pashandis, offenders. They think that doesn't matter. You can worship Vishnu, you can worship Shiva, you can worship Durga, you can worship Ganapati, and it's all the same, because the important thing isn't the form or personality, it's the energy within that form. So they say you can imagine any form and worship that and get the same result. That's why Prabhupada mentions in the first line of the purport, idolatrous worshippers of many demigods. So in Christianity, there's strictures strongly decrying idol worship or worshiping graven images. And here the same idea is being put forward, that one should not worship idols or graven images. And I always thought, Srila Prabhupada would respond that we don't worship graven images because image means imagination. And I thought, oh, this is just a little bit of word trickery. I had to say, I admit that. But then when looking at the dictionary definitions of image, one of the prime definitions is something built coming from the imagination. Isn't that interesting? So people imagine various forms and worship those forms. That's called idol worship, or worshiping a graven image. But the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is not conjured up by the imagination of some artistic person, but is described in great detail in the Vedic literatures. Venum kvanantamaravinda dalaya taksham barhavatam samasitam buddhasundarangam kandarpakoti kamaniya vishesha shobham govindam adi purusham tamaham bhajami. Venum, he's playing on the flute. Aravinda dalaya taksham. You know that? His eyes are like beautiful lotus petals. He's got the complexion of rain clouds, and many millions of cupids are stunned by his exquisite beauty. And it goes on, and describing in the Brahma Samhita the form and personality and qualities of Lord Krishna. So, but these Pashandis, or worshippers of many gods, are very prominent within the Hindu religion. Srila Prabhupada would often describe it as hodgepodge. You know that word, hodgepodge? Whatever you like, you can do. Whatever worship you like, that's fine. It's all the same. Hodgepodge. And I remember, even in the early days of the Hare Krishna movement, there were many groups, and some of them were Hindu groups, that would come to the temple. And there was a leader of another temple, the Hindu temple in New Jersey. His name was Arun Kantaria. He's no longer with us. But he, for some time, he was enthusiastic to support the movement, the Hare Krishna movement. But at a certain point, he stopped. He became very angry. He said, these Hare Krishna people, they say to worship Krishna and nobody else. That's not Hindu religion. And I got mad, damn mad. That's what he said. And he broke with the supporting the Hare Krishna movement. Of course, such people, they feign adherence to the tenets of the Bhagavad Gita, but in general, they haven't read the Bhagavad Gita or haven't studied it carefully. Because what does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Yepi anya devata bhakta yajanti shadayanvita tepi mam eva kaunteya yajanti avidipurvakam. Those who worship other gods are actually that worship is meant for me, but is given improperly, avidhi, without proper understanding. In many, many places, he says things like that. Well, so these people, they supposedly base their understanding on the Vedic literature and Bhagavad Gita, but unfortunately, they haven't taken the time to carefully study the Bhagavad Gita and understand its tenets. So over time, and over by popular understanding, becomes deviated from the essential primal understanding of the Vedic literature. So they're called here Pashandis, offenders. I wonder, one can wonder whether the same thing might happen in the Hare Krishna movement. Over time, there'll be some kind of popular direction that people go in, the devotees or people who are associated, and as a result, they forget the essential teachings. Is that possible? What do you think? What do you think?
When he says they'll forget about essential teachings,
Yes,
our devotees will deviate.
that's the question I'm posing. Yes.
Yeah, it's important that we always whimsically one should not practice bhakti, because if whimsically practice, then we will definitely deviate from the original teachings.
And how do we know what the original teachings are?
We must accept the authority, and under the guidance, we should render service all the time.
Yeah. So that's why there are the classes, that we have regularly, because we study the books, and that's the precept. And there's also example of what Srila Prabhupada did. What did Srila Prabhupada do? Both of those are very important, because how to apply the understanding, because there's sometimes differences of opinion about how things should be applied. So there's the precept, we find in the books, and also there's example in Srila Prabhupada's life, Lord Chaitanya's life, etc. So that's our, hopefully we will stay on a good track by regularly studying and understanding those things. I'll give one little example, my personal experience of this. It wasn't long ago that it's a small thing, but I was advocating that for the Gaur Purnima feast, it's supposed to be an Ekadashi feast. Did you know that? It's not even actually, the feast is very small, not even a feast. It's just a slight little bit of break fast, if anything, after moonrise. So anyway, I did a lot of study on that. I read Prabhupada's letters. I talked to devotees, temple presidents, and authorities all over, and that's pretty clear. That was Prabhupada's instruction. But because in some places they didn't want that, they didn't like that because they wanted to have nice big feast. People got really mad at me, very mad. What was the cause of their being mad? Well, that it was done in a different way in other places. It was done this way. It was done that way. Okay. But anyway, that's a small thing. You follow, but we need to really be aware. At least try. What's the basis of our activity? The basis of activity is Shastra, Sadhu, Guru, and so this is a little example. There are many other examples also that we could give. So, and if another example is practically if you at the end of the arti, after arti, there's Nrsimha prayers. You know that? Nrsimha prayers. And nowadays, if you don't chant Jai Nrsimhadev, Jai Prahlad Maharaj, Nitya Gaur Hari Bol, Jai Prabhupada, Jai Gurudev, then people get mad at you. Or if you say that Prabhupada never did, they get mad at you. Well, okay, but did Prabhupada do that? Or is it hodgepodge? You just have to chant everything together, hodgepodge. So anyway, people get mad at you for that and stop you from doing things. But anyway, so one has to be careful about what is the actual teaching. Like these in the Hindus here, they're believing the actual teaching is that all gods are the same. They probably learned it from their teachers or their parents or their whatever, and but it's off track. So we have to go back to the original, back to the source. Here that's why Prabhupada mentioned Bhagavad Gita as it is, not as somebody else tried to interpret it, but very clearly. And not only these Pashandis, but there's all kinds of people who try to stop the Hare Krishna movement because it's we're in the realm of Maya. And Kali tries to stop Krishna consciousness. So, for example, I don't know if you're familiar, but there was an effort in Russia about 5 years ago to ban the Bhagavad Gita as it is from and the Hare Krishna movement from the country. Did you know that? You can read about it on ISKCON News. So the contention was that Bhagavad Gita was an extremist literature, and the person who brought the suit, it was in Tomsk, which is a city of about 500,000 people in Siberia, far eastern Russia. And the person who brought the suit was apparently associated with the Eastern Orthodox Church. So they didn't like, anybody muscling in on their territory. But they said the reason they said it was an extremist literature was because of this verse from the Bhagavad Gita 3:32, third chapter, 32nd verse. But those who out of envy disregard these teachings and do not follow them regularly are to be considered bereft of all knowledge, befooled, and ruined in their endeavors for perfection. So based on that verse, they made suit, and it was quite a big deal. There was quite a bit of turmoil in Russia and in India as well. Finally, the judge, in trying to understand the case, had to read the Bhagavad Gita, and she came to the case with, with the Bhagavad Gita and all these different bookmarks there. So she understood that actually the contentions of the mm, person who brought the suit, that Krishna consciousness insults other religions and all that stuff, was not actually found there in the Bhagavad Gita. They were false accusations. And then after that, the person appealed it to a higher court, and then finally it was dismissed. So these kind of things, Ashandis try to stop. In fact, also in Singapore, you know that the Hare Krishna movement is banned in Singapore. Did you know that? Although being banned is not necessarily always bad. Sometimes, when a government bans a book, then everybody wants to read it.
Hmm.
And the government previously in Russia, before the current government system, all religions were banned, including Hare Krishna movement, and so people were very, very enthusiastic to read our books. And even one book was brought in, it would be copied hundreds of times so that people could read it. So it's not always bad to be banned, but anyway, this is just certain ways to try to stop the Krishna consciousness movement. Comments, questions?
It's interesting, I can say, how it you try to suppress, because love for Krishna is in everyone. No one can. I think the more they try to suppress, the more people are more. I think that's the reason Russian devotees are always very enthusiastic, because
Even
they got
Russians, Eastern Europeans, not Americans. Americans also sometimes too. Indians also, all kinds. Because we're not Indians or Americans. You're right.
Well, we are not that much suppressed so much. That's why we don't know the value of it.
Okay, good point.
Easy things are available very easily. We take it for granted. When you find something with difficulty, even in Hare Krishna movement, also those devotees who have struggled and searched for it very desperately, they understand the value of it. And many times, those has not gone through it, may not have much of appreciation. So one way it's Krishna's mercy, I see.
Good point. Good point. Sometimes devotees would give the example. I don't think should, but when you want to temper steel, you take the hot metal and you bang it. You know that they do this? They bang it and then it becomes stronger. They heat it up and then they bang it. So similarly, your point is that sometimes in the face of persecution, one's Krishna consciousness can become enhanced because it might facilitate one becoming more serious. Actually, that point is also made by Lord Krishna. He says, when I'm really favorable to somebody, I take away their material supports. This Pradhanath Prabhu has his hand up there, I see. Haribol.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Are you in India or in this country?
In India.
Okay.
Until next Tuesday.
Okay.
Prabhuji, I just was wondering, about this word here, where many people, at least in India, consider the demigods to be equal, right? Or they at least out of ignorance, worship and think everybody is the same. My question is, I see a lot of people converting to different faiths, for example, to Christianity, to Muslim. And while, sincere practitioners on the path of Krishna consciousness try, to share the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita as it is. But in general, I was curious, is it better that at least they are, taking the names of the demigods and somehow or other, maybe faulty, but practicing? Are they better than, converting to different faiths? Because I see that a lot happening here, especially in India. Am
Well,
I
the
clear?
question is whether your question is whether it's better to follow worship demigods than to convert to Christianity or Islam.
Yes.
It depends. It could be. I mean, the advantage of worshiping the advantage of worshiping the demigods, if one does so following the Vedic system, would be that gradually they'd be elevated because, for example, if they want to worship goddess Kali, there's certain restrictions, and ultimately they're put forward to and come to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But how it's presented, how they're learning to worship the demigods, probably most of the time is not according to rules and regulations found in the scriptures. I don't know. Perhaps it is, but so that's the only advantage of that worship of demigods. So, in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shuta Goswami says, Dharma svanustita pumsam vishvakshena katasuyak notpadayat yadiratim shrama evahi kevalam. If that activity, whether it be demigod worship or other worships, if it doesn't give you an attachment or attraction for the hearing the message of Godhead, Krishna Kata, then it's useless. So you can't make a blanket statement about that, because some people, they are serious about Christianity or Islam or demigod worship, and if they're sincere in their attempt to come to understand the ultimate reality, that can also be an impetus to come to Krishna consciousness, but not all people. So it will depend probably on the individual, but it can be a beneficial. Sure, certainly it can be, but it's depending on the sincerity and the position of the individual. What do you think?
Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, I mean, I was thinking somehow or other they are at least taking the names of the Lord.
Yes. Which
yes.
ones are taking the names of the Lord?
I mean, they do come to the program sometimes, chant Krishna's names, chant
Oh,
Lord
I see.
Rama's
Okay.
names,
Yeah,
attach.
sure. Yeah, of course. Like these, I mean, we're seeing these are mlechas and they're chanting the names of the Lord. So they're Hari Hari, right? Somebody's stealing, Hari Hari. So yes, and we'll see later that as we're talking, you'll see it has an effect on Chankazi also. So certainly, if they're chanting the names of the Lord, that's great. If, those who are demigod worshippers don't necessarily chant the names of the Lord. Sometimes they like to chant, Kali or whatever. So, yes. When Lord Chaitanya was having his Sankirtan party, Jagai Madai, they said, "Oh, this is some wonderful songs about Durga." They're chanting. That's what they thought. They didn't hear this, but they got. And also, in the Chaitanya Bhagavat, we read that when Chankazi heard the tumult of the devotees coming towards his house with music, he thought, "Oh, they must be having a marriage. They must be having some kind of worship of demigods there," he thought. But it was the names of the Lord. Krishna Kirtan, Prabhu. Go ahead. Kavita.
I was thinking about your question that whether the Hare Krishna movement will, move into the worship of demigods. I just think that if we are just interested in increasing the number of people who join the movement, maybe it's an easy way to do it, but I don't think it's necessary, because I was also thinking about temples in India, like Govind Dev Ji's temple.
Yes.
It's just Govind Dev Ji. And they are dedicated to his, devotional service to Govind Dev Ji, the temple people, the temple authorities. And thousands of people come through that temple every day. And they have, I think, 4 or 5 aartis. Not one time do you see the temple empty. They're not, and of course, it has been over time that, I don't know, it's been forever, I guess, that's how that temple is. So you don't have to change to have, all the demigods in our temples just because you want people to come through. More
Yes,
people.
good point. Good point. A lot of people do that. And Srila Prabhupada, back in like 1972, he wrote a letter to Rupanuga. He said, we have enough people. We have enough devotees. 1972, he said, now our business should be to boil the milk. Because when you boil the milk, it becomes sweeter. So now the devotees we have, that we should make sure that they're fully understanding and educated and practicing carefully. That's yeah. So, and also he also made a very good point you made, that when you sell a diamond, you don't get many customers. It's very expensive, so that's okay if not a lot of people come. As Srila Prabhupada mentioned, that when he came, if he had relaxed the rules and regulations for the disciples, then he could have gotten millions of immediately. But no, no. Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschid mam veti tatvata. Out of many thousands of people, men may be interested in perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows him in truth. So it's okay that we don't have a huge following. And so Prabhupada was very insistent that we don't change or adjust the philosophy or the practices for trying to attract people, extra people. My godbrother, Lakshmi Sringa Prabhu, always talks about how when he went to see Srila Prabhupada in 1977, when Prabhupada was on his ailing and prior to his disappearance, he was chanting. They had 24-hour kirtan in Srila Prabhupada's room, so he was chanting Hare Krishna. And he thought in his mind, "Oh, let me chant Brahma Bole Chaturmukhe Krishna Krishna Hare Hare Mahadeva Pancham." You know that chant people sometimes. And then it's in the middle of the night, and he thought Prabhupada was sleeping. As soon as he immediately Prabhupada's hand went up. No, stop, don't chant that. Even though it's the point of that is to chant Krishna, but still he stopped it immediately. Very interesting. Very interesting. So to change things, to adjust it for people's enjoyment, or people to get more people. Like the temple in Jaipur, Govindaji. Since that's 500 years, Govindaji. Govindaji was brought there from Vrindavan at the time of Aurangzeb, Yes, thank you. Hare Krishna. So 4.
আশি কহে হিন্দুর ধর্ম ভাঙিল নিমাই, যে কীর্তন প্রবর্তাইল কভু শুনি নাই।
Coming to me, the Hindus complained, Nimai Pandit has broken the Hindu religious principles. He has introduced this Sankirtan system, which we never heard of from any scripture.
মঙ্গলচণ্ডী বিশ্বহরি করি জাগরণ, তাতে বাদ্য নৃত্য গীত যজ্ঞ আচরণ।
When we keep a night-long vigil to observe religious performances for the worship of Mangal Chandi and Bishhari, playing on musical instruments, dancing and chanting are certainly fitting customs. See, these are all the expansions or varieties of Durga, Mangal Chandi, Vishwari. Yeah.
পূর্বে ভালো ছিল এই নিমাই পণ্ডিত, গয়া হইতে আসিয়া চালায় বিপরীত।
Nimai Pandit was previously a very good boy, but since he has returned from Gaya, he conducts himself differently. Oh, so what happened in Gaya? Do you remember? Come on.
He got initiated.
Yes, he was initiated by his spiritual master Ishwar Puri, and then at that time he was encouraged to begin spreading the chanting of the holy names, and he inaugurated subsequently the Sankirtan movement. So before that, he was okay. Next 207.
উচ্চ করি গায় গীত, দেয় করতালি, মৃদঙ্গ করতাল শব্দে কর্ণে লাগে তালি।
Now he loudly sings all kinds of songs, claps, and plays drums and hand cymbals, making a tumultuous sound that deafens our ears.
না জানি কি খায়া মত্ত হয়া নাচে গায়, হাসে কাঁদে পড়ে উঠে গড়াগড়ি যায়।
We don't know what he eats and makes him become mad, that makes him become mad, dancing, singing, sometimes laughing, crying, falling down, jumping up, and rolling on the ground.
নগরিয়াকে পাগল কইল সদা সংকীর্তন, রাত্রে নিদ্রা নাহি যাই করি জাগরণ।
He has made all the people practically mad by always performing congregational chanting. At night, we cannot get any sleep. We are always kept awake.
নিমাই নাম ছাড়ি এবে বলায় গৌরহরি, হিন্দুর ধর্ম নষ্ট কইল পাষণ্ড সঞ্চারী।
Now he has given up his own name, Nimai, and introduced himself by the name Gaur Hari. He has spoiled the Hindu religious principles and introduced the irreligion of non-believers.
কৃষ্ণের কীর্তন করে নিচ বাড়, এই পাপে নবদ্বীপ হইবে উজাড়।
Now, the lower classes are chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra again and again. For this sinful activity, the entire city of Navadvip will become deserted.
হিন্দু শাস্ত্রে ঈশ্বর নাম মহামন্ত্র জানি, সর্বলোক শুনিলে মন্ত্রের বীর্য হয় হানি।
According to the Hindu scriptures, God's name is the most powerful hymn. If everyone hears the chanting of the name, the potency of the hymn will be lost. Purport. In the list of offenses in the chanting of the holy name of the Lord, it is said, Dharma vrat tyag bhutari sarva shubha kriya samyam api parmada. To consider the chanting of the holy name of the Lord equal to the execution of some auspicious ritualistic religious ceremony is an offense. According to the materialistic point of view, observing a religious ceremony invokes an auspicious atmosphere for the material benefit of the entire world. Materialists therefore manufacture religious principles to live comfortably and without disturbance in executing their material activities. Since they do not believe in the existence of God, they have manufactured the idea that God is impersonal, and that to have some conception of God, one may imagine any form. Thus, they respect the many forms of the demigods as different representations or manifestations of the Lord. They are called Bahu Ishwar Badis, or followers of thousands and thousands of gods. They consider the chanting of the names of the demigods an auspicious activity. Great so-called swamis have written books saying that one may chant any name, Durga, Kali, Shiva, Krishna, Ram, and so on, because any name is all right for invoking an auspicious atmosphere in society. Thus they are called pashandis, unbelievers or faithless demons. Such pashandis do not know the actual value of the chanting of the holy name of Lord Krishna. Foolishly proud of their material birth as Brahmins and their consequently higher position in the social order, they think of the other classes, namely Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, as lower classes. According to them, no one but the Brahmins can chant the holy name of Krishna. For if others chanted the holy names, its potency would be reduced. They are unaware of the potency of Lord Krishna's name. The Brihanaradiya Purana recommends Harir Nama, Harir Nama, Harir Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalo Nasteva, Nasteva, Nasteva Gatiranyata. For spiritual progress in the age of Kali, there is no alternative, no alternative, no alternative to the holy name, the holy name, the holy name of the Lord. The Pashandis do not accept that the potency of the holy name of Krishna is so great that one can be delivered simply by chanting the holy name. Although this is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 12:33-51, Kirtanadeva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Param Brajet. Any man from any part of the world who practices chanting of the holy name of Krishna can be liberated and after death go back home, back to Godhead. The rascal Pashandis think that if anyone but a Brahmin chants the holy name, the potency of the holy name is vanquished. According to their judgment, instead of delivering the fallen souls, the potency of the holy name is reduced. Believing in the existence of many gods and considering the chanting of the holy name of Krishna no better than other hymns, these Pashandis do not believe in the words of the Shastra, Harir Nam, Harir Nam, Harir Nam, Eva Kevalam. But Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu confirms in his Shikshastaka, Kirtaniya Shadahori, one must chant the holy name of the Lord always, 24 hours a day. The Pashandis, however, are so fallen and falsely proud of having taken birth in Brahmin families that they think that instead of delivering all the fallen souls, the holy name becomes impotent when constantly chanted by lower class men. Significant in verse 211 are the words Krishner Kirtan Kore Nich Bodu Bodu, indicating that anyone can join in the Sankirtan movement. This is confirmed in the Srimad Bhagavatam 2:418. Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Pulkasha Abhira Yamshumba Yavanaka Sadaya. This is a list of the names of Chandalas. The Pashandis say that when these lower class men are allowed to chant, their influence is enhanced. They do not like the idea that others should also develop spiritual qualities, because this would curb their false pride in having taken birth in the families of the elevated Brahmin caste, with a monopoly on spiritual activities. But despite all the protests from so-called Hindus and members of the Brahmin caste, we are propagating the Krishna consciousness movement all over the world, according to the injunctions of the Shastras and the order of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu. Thus, we are sure that we are delivering many fallen souls, making them bona fide candidates for going back home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna. Very nice purport. I think we'll leave it at that unless someone has additions, subtractions, comments, questions.
All I think is that it has to be presented to the public very maturely. If you present as it is, they will freak out and disturbance will come. Because not everyone is able to accept this statement and they just become against Krishna consciousness. So it has to be presented properly in a way they can understand why it is said, that Pasandi.
Yes. We won't necessarily just say, hey, you're Prashandi. Yes. I got you. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you all very much. Hare Krishna. Lord Chaitanya, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
You know.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you
Is
for
that Ramana there from India? No.
Yeah, it's actually me.
Oh,
Hare
where
Krishna.
are you?
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Show your face. Huh?
My face.
Show your face. Everyone know Mr. Ramana Prabhu?
Radha Ramana Prabhu, yes. Oh, look at that. Yeah.
Thank-
Chalo, nice. Very bold.
He saved his head.
Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam
Patitanam
Vishnu is here. Namo Namah.
Ma.
Thank you, Vishnugada Prabhu. Hare